A few weeks ago, James was on a panel at a conference, and they got around to discussing the regulations that the EU has recently put on free-to-play. It was a fantastic discussion, but something nagged at him. In his half-exhausted conference haze, he couldn't quite put his finger on why these regulations rubbed him the wrong way. Later, on the flight home, he realized that there was a deeper reason for the stance that he'd taken at that panel, so today we figured we'd put that right and talk about the really interesting legal landscape forming around free-to-play games. So first, some background. A few years ago in the EU, they implemented some laws to protect children from predatory free-to-play games. And the intention here was great, though the implementation was terrible. Apple yanked titles from the App Store for just calling themselves free-to-play, regardless of what the game actually was or who it was targeted at. Many small indie devs who were actually trying to do free-to-play right went out of business because of this, and some of the worst offenders found their way back to the App Store in just a few weeks with clever ways to circumvent the restrictions. It's a mess, but all that is on companies like Apple and Google and the way they responded to these laws, not actually a problem with the laws themselves. What James realized too late to discuss at that panel, and what really bothered him about these laws, is that as positive a step as they are, children are actually not the ones free-to-play games really prey on. Children don't have credit cards, and there are enough ways for a parent to keep their child from spending $10,000 on a game that children only make up a small fraction of the free-to-play money coming in. No, the people predatory free-to-play really targets are people who are depressed, people who just suffered a bad breakup or who lost their job, people without a social outlet, people who find community in these games, a community they don't want to let down, or people with compulsive personalities who know they shouldn't be spending on these games but just see each purchase as one little tiny thing they want to do in the moment until those purchases add up. And again, these laws are good to have and are probably used differently in the EU than in the US, but the thing that makes James angry about them is that he's been talking to members of the US government about ethical free-to-play a great deal over the last year. And the problem is, it's really easy to score some quick political points by, quote, protecting children, while actually getting nothing substantive done. And because the rare cases where some child runs up a $3,000 bill on these games always ends up on the news, it's very easy to pretend as if putting in some guidelines for those specific scenarios somehow solves everything that's wrong with free-to-play, while not actually cutting into the bottom line of companies that are ruining people's lives. In US politics, this is exactly the sort of law you pass to sweep a problem under the rug and not actually have to do something about it. And I really hope the EU doesn't use these laws as a similar excuse. Because working in this industry, you hear the real effect of these games all the time. A woman who maxed out her credit cards trying to support her clan and had to be hospitalized for being near suicidal when her payments couldn't go through because she felt as though she'd let everybody who depended on her down. A father who stole his children's college fund to support his free-to-play compulsion. A lady who, when the company whose game she played bought her a plane ticket to come to a convention to meet the team that built it, couldn't go because she couldn't afford the train ticket to the airport, as she had spent literally every cent she had on the game. These are all real stories that have been shared with us by people in the industry or stories we've heard firsthand. And how do we know these stories? Because free-to-play game companies actually keep in close contact with their biggest whales. They'll often reach out to them personally or send them little gifts to show them that they matter, that the company cares about them. And when they reach out to these people, sometimes these are the stories they get back. And the worst part is, even when they hear these stories, nothing happens. Sometimes brave individual developers will quit or walk away from those companies, but systemically, nothing. Every major free-to-play company has at least a few of these stories. The most exploitative ones have dozens, maybe hundreds. And yet we don't act because many of these companies financially depend on their ability to prey on just such people. So look, I prefer responsible self-regulation to regulation by those who know nothing about our industry or what we do, but eventually, if we as an industry don't act, laws will have to be passed to protect the most vulnerable of these game companies' victims. And when they are, I hope we don't just use children as an excuse to avoid the real problem. See you next week.